Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Like I said, I was born in Salem, Ohio, but then we moved to, and there was other times when I was really little that because of the war, my dad got a job at the Akron Goodyear plant where they were building planes and tires and stuff like that. So
Gotcha.
We lived there briefly and we moved around a little bit. But we really, for the most part, I could say my childhood in the early years was in Springfield, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So like I said, from 7th grade to, second grade to 7th grade.
Okay.
And then my 7th grade year, my mom, who was a nurse, my dad was a bread, he had Wonder Bread and stuff like that, had his route and stuff like that. And I remember I used to go with him on some of the times because I really enjoyed that. 7 kids in the family. And my mother was
Were you the oldest, youngest?
No, I was the third oldest.
Okay.
I had 2 older brothers, and then obviously the younger, I got a sister that's younger, then another brother, another sister, and another brother, but younger, that came along. But there were 7 of us all together, and my mom was a nurse, and then she started not feeling good and was having some problems. Well, my grandparents, we visited up all the time and would go back to Salem to visit and everything. Just thought it would be better if we moved back to Salem.
Gotcha.
Which none of us at that time, because we're kids.
Yeah.
You know, all of our friends were there and stuff like that. So we ended up, I'll try to shorten this as much as I possibly can.
Okay.
But so we go back to Salem, and my brother, who had already graduated from Springfield High School, the little school that we
25 graduate class. Yeah.
He had graduated, so he was attending his graduation party, and then he could drive and everything. So he had driven to that. On his way back, he got in an accident and was in the hospital. My mom, who didn't drive, my dad was at work because he got up early in the morning and delivered the bread. They just
got to do it early.
Went into Conneaut, Ohio, and had quite a route.
Yeah.
And so a friend of ours, his name was Herb Root Jr., Root. He said, well, I can take you there because she had to get going. So on the way to the hospital to see my brother, they were hit broadside on my mother's side by a drunk driver. He was killed. My mother should have been killed. And if you saw the car, you would think there was no way anybody could have survived that. In fact, I get emotional still thinking back to those times.
Absolutely.
So anyhow, they didn't think she was going to live in. It was a little hospital because we weren't in a big community back then. And so they had to transfer. They said, we can't help her here at this little hospital they took her to. She's going to have to go back to a bigger hospital in Ohio or somewhere. And I can't remember. No, actually, I can't remember. It was in Ohio. I know
somewhere
that.
where they have more technology.
A bigger hospital.
Yeah. All right.
And if she makes it there, maybe they can help her. I mean, brain damage. I mean, all kinds of stuff. She was.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it was terrible.
I'm sorry.
So anyhow, that happened, and my dad didn't have insurance. The drunk driver who was killed, he had a big family. He had no insurance, and so they didn't know if my mom was going to make it or not. And so my uncle, who after the war came out and started freeway trailer sales here in Escondido, was doing very well. It was over on 13th now, where there's a Carl's Jr. there and some other stuff there. That's where his had that whole big area. But he offered to take the 3 oldest boys to help my dad out because we had no idea what was going to happen at that time. So he put us on a Greyhound bus, and my two older brothers, one had graduated, my other one was 2 years ahead of me. Mm-hmm. This was a great adventure. Yeah. I'm going to be frank with you, I hated it.
Uh-huh. What grade were you in?
I was just leaving the 7th grade.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah. Or 8th grade, I'm sorry.
There you go, okay. Yeah. I moved out here when we were in 8th grade.
Yeah. And I was really close to my mom and dad. Not that my brothers weren't too. We were just a close family because that's all we had.
Oh, sure.
Because we lived out in the country and I still remember the house we moved into. We didn't even have an inside toilet.
Oh my gosh.
We had the outhouses. That's how old I am. But then we finally got all that stuff and everything.
Well, that was also the area you were in too. So,
but anyhow, so we came out to live with my uncle. Mm-hmm. He put us up in the garage and we had the beds in there and stuff like that. But like I said, so I started my freshman year, and I was not a great student. I resented being here. I probably spent as much time in the principal's office, I tell people, as I did in the classroom. Because I didn't want to be here.
I didn't either.
But anyhow, so it wasn't until my mom finally saved her life, but she was never the same. She lost sight in her eyes, had these terrible migraine headaches, and swollen all the time, and things like that. But they thought if we came to California, that the weather would be better for her.
Okay.
And she lost her taste, everything, those things. But great lady. I never heard her complain once. And so my dad, the whole family, eventually everybody ended up out here in Escondido. And it took a few years for all that to happen before that could happen. My dad ended up coming out and working for my uncle, taking trailers out to the desert or different places and setting them up. The motorhomes, they call them at that time. Now they're modular homes and things like that.
Sure, yeah.
But so my dad worked for him and did that, which I'm very thankful to my uncle for having that happen. And
what high school did you start at as a freshman?
At Escondido High School. It was only a high school. My two cousins, one was the same age as my older brother. The other cousin was 2 years the same as my brother that was also at Escondido High School. I started out as a freshman, he was a junior. And then eventually when my sister and them came out, they all went through the schools out here too. But anyhow, so the family was split up for a few years there. And so after my freshman year, I was a pretty good sized person, so football.
There you go.
So fine. I went out and instead of being on the freshman team, they moved me to the JV team because I was a little bit bigger. I'm not saying I was a great athlete or anything like that, but that's what I did.
Well, size matters in football, let's be honest.
So I ended up playing JV football.
Yeah.
And then I also played basketball because I really loved basketball because the little town we came from, you grew up playing baseball, basketball. We didn't, our school didn't have football.
Right.
We just didn't have that. We had baseball and basketball and things like that. So I really enjoyed those. So I ended up doing those things in my freshman year. And then it wasn't until my sophomore year, I'll be frank with you, I was struggling. There were 7 kids in the family, nobody had ever gone to college. Wasn't how we were, it wasn't part of our family.
Wasn't your aspiration, yeah.
Because you just didn't think about it. You were going to get out of high school and then you were going to either go into the service or you were going to work.
Yeah, have a career somewhere,
And I was the same way because I just didn't know any different. And my parents were great people. I mean, when I look back, what my dad went through, I shouldn't start saying these things. But anyhow, and my mom both. Yeah. Great people. He ended up dying at 63.
That would have been rough.
He ended up dying at 63, was shot point blank in the chest by a drug addict coming out of a restaurant. My dad never had money, but he was shot point blank at the chest. And by then they had moved up to Anaheim. My mother ended up dying at 60 years old of cancer, breast cancer, so lost them. So a lot of those things, and by then I was teaching at Escondido High School, fortunate to come back. But it was really, my parents had a great influence on me, but Coach Chick Embrey, that if people that listen to this podcast know anything about Escondido, he's a legend here.
He is.
Mean, the lives he touched and over the years is just incredible. Can't even how God had blessed him to touch other people's lives. And my sophomore year, I played for him. So I played on the varsity my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And Coach Embrey had a Bible study during the summers, and he invited me to come to that. So my sophomore year, I went to the Bible study, and I went and listened. And we had gone to church as a family and stuff like that, but I had never personally accepted Jesus Christ as my own personal Savior. So I went, I think that was the second time I went. He said, what do you think about all this? And I said, I want to accept Christ as my Savior. So he led me to Christ. And from that time on, I wanted to be like Coach.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.